course, I'm aware that I taught you everything you know, and that's why I don't want this to come off as some sort of unnecessary criticism or anything. I mean, you guys are doing phenomenal, especially you, Aloma Seraphi Jasmine. It's just, with everyone playing Dark Ruler this format, I think... I mean, would it kill ya to link summon a little less?
Good evening, Jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. Well, we've had a couple more weeks of Pote format by now, and it's clear that it's a little bit less Dragon Ruler and a little bit more Zodiac. Sprite is really all that's worth playing, and now begins the dangerous work of finding some decks that can play above their boards. The first may lie in a regional top from last weekend, fueled by some plants so neglected they might as well be succulents. Presenting Rikka. So here's the list. This is TopTierGamingYGO's top 8 Rikka list from the Fort Worth Regional, with one change. There's an extra healer in there. I think he thought it was a once per turn. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is the pack opening website that everyone's been using for their progression series, but you might have missed it's also got a deck builder, a card database, and a wealth of strategy articles. I personally use it to post the Chalice Slime monthly deck breakdowns, so give it a look at www.ygoprodeck.com. With that, let's wrestle with Rikka. Rikka is a series of plant-type monsters that you may recognize from Adventure Sun Avalon, one of the Tier 2 decks from the pre-Pote format. These monsters enable an exceptionally powerful, albeit slow, advantage loop centered around tributing plants to summon extremely powerful flowers from the hand. While the archetype has been around since 2020, their solo setups were too low impact to blossom into something playable. In Sun Avalon, Snowdrop specifically was used to set up Teardrop, an Xyz monster that can tribute opponents' monsters as a quick effect. It was a neat part of an end board with a diversity of interaction, but unfortunately it wasn't much more than that. Until now! For some unknown reason, Power of the Elements randomly included several pieces of Rikka support. I don't know why exactly, but anything that makes plants more playable is all right by me. What's better, these aren't the type of plants that you purchase in the checkout aisle of the grocery store. These actually stand a chance of making it more than the drive home. Rikka Princess can be special summoned as long as you... and is a negate out of the graveyard. And Rikka Con is a pseudo lair of darkness that searches a Rikka spell trap. This drastically warps the plant playstyle. Rather than building a beautiful garden on your board, you instead plant perennials, monsters that will gain advantage every turn, culminating in enough disruptions to make it through a setup, but usually winning by way of the long game. Think less 45 negate nonsense and more toss format Salamangrate, which is exactly where you want to be in a format where people are maining Dark Ruler. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First up, the Sun Avalons. We are still playing some number of them, 3 to be exact, though the unexpected die does fetch the Sunseed genus Loci. This is a fantastic way to build part of a board turn 1, and less discerning opponents may waste a ton of negates trying to prevent you from making a big Sun Avalon bungus, only to realize you are not intending to do that at all. At minimum, it's going to get you to an Aroma Seraphi Jasmine, which can search a Lone Fire Blossom and get you to anything else. We're on 2 Loci and 1 Twin, though the 3 unexpected die in the deck are for this as well. Next, we're playing 3 copies of Rikka Petal. Oh my goodness, am I happy this card finally found a home. It's tremendous. During your main phase, you can take a Rikka monster from your deck, except Petal, and add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. This locks you into plant monsters, though who cares? During your opponent's end phase, while this is in your graveyard, if you control no monsters or all plants, you can special summon this card, which allows you to activate it again during your main phase. Think of it as a Scarm, except it also starts your plays. After that, we've got 3 copies of Rikka Princess. During your main phase, you can special this card from your hand, but while it's in the face-up monster zone, you cannot special summon monsters except plants. That could lock you for the rest of the turn, but I like that it doesn't. It's just insult to injury in the face of what has been a historic Xeno lock for the archetype. If you control a Rikka monster, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can shuffle this card from your hand or graveyard into the deck, tribute a plant monster, and negate that effect. That's a hard once per turn. After that, we've got Mudan the Rikka Fairy. This card allows you to tribute a plant monster, special this card from your hand, and if it's normal summoned or special summoned by the effect of a plant monster, you can add a Rikka spell trap from your deck to your hand. 2 copies of Primula the Rikka Fairy. If a monster you control is tributed except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from from your hand in defense position, and you can target up to 2 plant monsters you control, increase their levels by 2 until the end of this turn. This card's phenomenal because it doesn't check until the chain is done resolving. If you add this card from your deck to your hand by tributing something, you can then immediately special summon it. Speaking of immediate special summons, we do still have the Snowdrop. You can tribute a plant monster, special summon this card and 1 plant monster from your hand, and you can't special summon for the rest of the turn except plants. You can target a plant you control. All plant monsters you currently control become that monster's level until the end of this turn. After that are 2 Lone Fire Blossom, 2 Ash Blossom, 2 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and 3 Psy-Frame Gear Gamma with a driver. This deck does a lot before you commit to a monster, which means that you can often get value off of one of the best hand traps in this format. We've got 3 copies of Unexpected Die, 1 for 1, 1 Sunvine Sowing, 3 Rikka Glamour, which has skyrocketed in price. When you activate this card, you can tribute a plant monster, add a Rikka from your deck to your hand. Then, if you tributed a monster when you activated this card, add a different plant monster that has the same level as the Rikka monster you added. After that, we have a Called by the Grave and 3 copies of Rikka Con. If you control a Rikka monster, you can set a Rikka spell trap directly from your deck to your spell and trap card zone, and you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except for plants. And once per turn, if you would tribute a plant monster you control to activate a Rikka card or effect, you can tribute any face-up monster your opponent controls, even though you do not control it. This is fantastic because a significant amount of your cards tribute monsters as part of their activation costs, which makes it very difficult for your opponent to interact with your removal. We've got 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence and 1 copy of Rikka Sheet. Target a face-up monster your opponent controls. You can tribute a plant monster. Players can't activate that face-up monster's effects on the field this turn. Then, if you tributed a monster when you activated this card, take control of it till the end phase and it becomes a plant monster. I hear Snatch Steal is a pretty good card. In the extra, we're playing 1 copy of Psy-Frame Lord Omega for Gamma reasons, 2 copies of Stranai, the Rikka Queen. You can detach a material from this card, then target a plant monster or Rikka card in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and if this card with Xyz material is tributed, you can special summon a rank 5 or higher plant Xyz Link monster from your extra deck or graveyard, and then attach this card to it as material. Usually you're going to be tributing this card with something like a Rikka Princess, and then summoning this Sacred Tree Beast High Paradin. I don't love this card, but it does work very well with the remainder of the archetype. We've got Teardrop the Rikka Queen in here, of course. We've got Alessi the Sylvan High Protector. We've got a Bengal Lancer, a Sun Avalon Melius, an Aromaseraphy Jasmine, Sylvan Dance Peony. This is a very interesting card. 2 copies of Sunvine Healer, and 3 Sun Avalon Dryas. In the side deck, of course, we've got the Dark Ruler No More, the Cosmic Cyclone for the Mystic Mind, but I want to bring special attention to a pointer of the Red Lotus. Top Tier Gaming Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very specific about this card. This format, playing with perfect information is going to be king. That's why you're going to see a lot more Triple Tactics talents calling the Confiscation mode, but one way you can ensure that you get the best card out of your opponent's grip is this bad boy. Knowing what you have to plan around is really good if you have a limited number of interactions. You can probably tribute a number of your opponent's cards away, but knowing what you have to tribute and when is extremely powerful. For that reason, they're not only playing a pointer, they're playing 2 Trap Trick expressly to search this card alongside 2 Anti-Spell Fragrance and 1 Red Reboot. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against MathMech, and we've opened extremely well. Let me show you what this deck can do. We're going to begin with a copy of 1 for 1. We're going to pitch this copy of Ghost Ogre to get a Sunseed Genus Loci to our side of the field, turning into a Dryas. We'll go Dryas in order to get a Sunvine Sowing, then fire off the Sowing in order to summon a Sunseed Twin from deck. We'll trigger the Twin, take 1,000, and then trigger the effect of the Twin and the effect of the Dryas, being met with a DD Crow, and firing off the Called by the Grave. Sometimes you draw the one of. After that, we're going to summon back this copy of Sunseed Genus Loci, as well as a copy of Sunvine Healer, which will increase our life points by 300, and that's time in the round, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go into an Aromaseraphy Jasmine, a Sun Avalon Dryas, and a Sunvine Healer, gaining another 300 and triggering the Aromaseraphy Jasmine to get a Snowdrop. We'll activate the effect to go for a Lone Fire Blossom, and fun fact, did you know that Mudon doesn't have to be summoned by her own effect? Summoning off of Lone Fire Blossom triggers, so we'll go for that, and then fire Rikka Con in order to set a copy of Sheet. We'll go for Glamour, tributing the Mudon to get 2 cards from deck to hand, and one of them is Primula, which we will then summon. Afterwards, we can special summon this copy of Princess, overlay for a copy of Stranai, trigger the Stranai in order to get back this copy of Lone Fire Blossom, which is prime material to summon alongside Snowdrop by tributing the Stranai. We'll go into a High Paradin off of the Stranai effect, and then make ourselves a copy of Petal, which will trigger the Petal effect, adding from deck to hand a copy of Mudon for next turn. We'll go for Snowdrop, targeting itself, make it an 8, and go for a Teardrop before normal summoning a Rikka Princess and ending on a Bengal Lancer. We'll pass back to our opponent, 2 for turn draws. Ooh, that's a really good one. They'll begin with a copy of Foolish Burial, sending a Sigma. Afterwards, they're going to activate Sigma, summoning it to their side of the field, then normal summoning a Diameter. This forces out the Bengal Lancer because we don't want them to get a negate. They're going to activate Signet Mining afterwards, pitching the diameter, and then going for a circular. They're going to send a Nebula to the graveyard. Now we will fire the sheet. We'll tribute their Sigma and take their circular. That'll trigger the effect of the teardrop the Rikka Queen to gain attack. They'll go for a Nebula, trigger the effect. We will Princess to negate, sending this Bangaloncer to the graveyard, and they are forced to set this copy of Superfactorial and hope for the best. Of course, we have like a million negates, but we might as well just go ahead and send the circular to graveyard using Teardrop's effect at end phase and activate the effect of Rikka Petal in our main. Our opponent's going to go for this copy of Superfactorial, and they do get to pick a diameter off of this, but unfortunately it's not going to matter. They do overlay for a copy of Laplation. They'll activate all three of its effects, but we can tribute the Laplation for the cost of the Rikka Princess. Our opponent will see that and concede. One of the major weaknesses of this deck is because it aims to accrue advantage over the course of a couple of turns, occasionally it has trouble managing its life total. This is especially apparent when you're playing against Sword Soul. Our opponent's going first. They're going to begin with a copy of Incredible Ecclesia. They'll tribute it off for a Moye. They've got a Moye in hand. Come on now. They're going to go Moye, reveal Longwan, and then Synchro Summon a copy of Chixiao. They'll activate Chixiao and Moye in sequence, drawing off the top. An Emergence. Oh, the blackout is added to hand. They'll activate Emergence here in order to get a copy of Vishutta and then send it immediately to the graveyard for this copy of Longwan. They'll use the effect of the Longwan to deal 1200 damage to us on the way to Evil Longwan before activating Pot of Desires. No follow-up, no follow-up, no follow-up. Oh god, that's all follow-up. They'll set 2 and pass back to us. Oh, right on time, jerk. We'll go for 1 here, getting a copy of Sunseed Genus Loci before making a Dryas. We'll activate Dryas' effect to get a copy of, you guessed it, Sunvine Sowing. Well, Sowing, they will Evil Longwan here. We take 12. We'll get a copy of Sunseed Twin to our side of the field. We'll take 1,000. We'll activate Dryas and Twin in sequence. They will activate both Infinite Impermanence and Chixiao in order to blank our entire board. Okay, we might be able to do this. From here, we can go into the Sylvan Link. We'll activate the effect. They'll activate Evil Longwan, which will banish it, but it won't negate it. We see off the top. Oh, thank God, a Rikka Petal. We'll go for the Petal here. We'll activate the effect in order to grab from deck to hand a copy of Mudan. We'll go for the Con afterwards. We'll activate Con, and they will black out. Unfortunately for them, we've activated the first effect of Con, which allows us to tribute our opponent's monster for the effect of Mudan. Oh my God, we made it out of that board. Okay, we're going to go for Rikka Glamour here. Not a super impressive follow-up, but we can still summon the Primula, and of course we can summon the Rikka Princess just by looking at her, and then overlaying for a copy of Stranai. We can activate Stranai here. That's going to cycle back to our hand the copy of Glamour. Will attack in for 2,000, and this represents 2 negates, both the Princess in the graveyard and the High Parade afterwards. Our opponent draws a Forbidden Droplet, normal summons a Moye, and oh, Princess time, I suppose. We'll go ahead and tribute off the Stranai. At resolution, we'll trigger the effect of the Stranai and the effect of Primura in order to potentially chain block it. We'll go for Hyperaton. They will Forbidden Droplet. And Longwan again. We have taken 6,000 damage exactly to assholes named Longwan. Oh, gosh. Baron de Fleur is going to be just enough to clean it up. One more turn is all I needed. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's on tier element, and they have unfortunately drawn a card that gives us a lot of pause. Sometimes you open the one of, and sometimes they do. Called by the Grave, exceptional in a deck that aims to recur Princess over and over again. We're going to begin with a copy of Lone Fire Blossom, and thank God they don't imperm that because we do not have anything else going on. We're going to go for Petal here in order to grab from deck to hand a copy of Mudan. We're going to go for a Dryas, then fire off the Sowing in order to grab a Sunseed Genus Loci. That's going to trigger the effect of the Dryas, which allows us to summon a copy of Healer. We can trigger Healer here, targeting our Dryas, gaining 300 life points, and going into a Jasmine. We'll trigger Jasmine, pitching this copy of Sunseed Genus Loci to the graveyard, and then going for the Melios line. We're going to make a really early Bangaloncer here before tributing it for a Mudan, then activating Mudan's effect. They will imperm at this position, which is unfortunate for them because we have already drawn Rikka Glamour. We're going to go for this copy of Primula afterwards, then we'll summon this Rikka Princess just by breathing on it, I suppose, before going into Stranai. We'll activate Stranai's effect, cycle back this copy of Glamour, and then make Bangaloncer. It's not a beautiful end board, but it's 4 interruptions with the Ash Blossom in hand. Our opponent's going to begin with a Called by the Grave. That's rough. They'll follow it up with a Rhoda. We will Ash Blossom here just for them to reveal they have another normal summon. They're going to go for Myru here, and oh my goodness, that's 2 pretty good ones. Okay, they're going to go for Rhino Heart. That's going to allow them to send the Myru. They can trigger the Myru. They can go for Kit Kalos. They can set a copy of Shaylin. They can trigger the Shaylin in sequence with the Kit Kalos in order to go into a Kaleido Heart, then trigger the Kaleido Heart to get a Hoff. They'll go for this copy of Rhino. We will Bangaloncer. This allows them to chain Hoffiness, and unfortunately, we are going to take 3,000 on the way to getting that card off the field. They'll trigger Hoffiness to go into a Dragostapelia and then proceed to the battle phase. We can protect our Bangaloncer with Sowing, but looks like they've forgotten something very important with that DD Crow, and that is Rikka Petal. It comes back at the end step, and during our main phase, we are going to use it to pop all the way off Skarm style. We're going to add from deck to hand a copy of Mudan. We'll activate Mudan in order to summon it. We'll activate the effect. They'll activate DD Crow targeting Princess. We'll activate Princess in response, which allows us to tribute the Mudan even though it is undercalled by the grave, it now can't be interacted with. We're going to go for the Glamour in order to get a Snowdrop. Then we will go for the Con. We will tribute our opponent's Dragastapelia so we can summon both the Snowdrop and the Princess. Then we'll activate the Snowdrop effect to go into a Lessie. Time to get BMing. Do we have Exodius, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord, on top of our deck? We do not. Let's go ahead and get rid of that Hoffiness and then go to the battle phase for a ton of damage. We have Yadalocked our opponent. We know they're drawing a Hoff and they'll concede. So it's time for game 2, and oh, kind of a mid-hand from us versus an insane one from our opponent. What? Oh my goodness. Sometimes you open Rhino Heart, 2 names, Shadow plus Infip. They're going to send a copy of Myru to go into Kitkalos. Kitkalos effect here to add the Myru back to hand. They're going to activate Kitkalos, cycling it for a Myru, milling 8, and realistically, they have 15 names in their hand. How many more could they hit? It turns out none. They're going to go Meta Noise in order to add back to hand a copy of Myru, and then Rhino Heart, sending a Hoffiness, and then they'll activate the Hoffiness effect to go into a Dragastapelia. This allows them to make Bahamut Shark and Toad. They'll set the infinite impermanence and pass turn. Okay, let's see what we can do here. That's a great start. We're going to go for the Infip, targeting the Toad. They're going to respond with the Toad, of course. Enjoy your Infip. We're going to normal summon the Primula. Pretty bad normal summon, but we do have the follow-up Sowing to get a copy of Genus Loci from deck. From here, we could trigger the Dryas to summon a Healer. We'll activate Healer's effect, targeting the Dryas. And then, of course, we'll make an Aromaseraphie Jasmine. We'll activate the effect. They will Dragastapelia here. Fine. We're going to go for the Rikka Glamour afterwards in order to add from deck to hand a Primula and a Princess. We can activate Primula, and then we can special summon the Princess because, I don't know, because. We'll go for Stranai afterwards in order to cycle back the Loci. Then we will activate Snowdrop's effect, tributing the Stranai, summoning itself and the Loci, and triggering the Stranai in order to get a Hyperratin. We'll activate Snowdrop's effect. And there's the unknown Infip. Okay, we can still maybe make this work. We're going to go into Dance Peony, and we have to find something crazy off the top. Well, that is something crazy, all right. We'll go for Mudon here. We're then going to follow it up with a Con. We're going to activate the effect of the Paraton to tuck a spell as well. We're going to set a copy of Rikka Sheet, go to the battle phase, clean up what we can, and then link off for a Melios, cycling back this Genus Loci so we can make a Bengal Lancer, tucking back the Dragastapelia. Okay, I'm feeling much better about this than I thought I would, and then I see the Poly. Oh, gosh. Okay, so Chimera's not as big a problem as you might think. We get to negate the effect of the Beast, which is nice, and we do so by tributing the Chimera, but it still does get to resolve, which is unfortunate. They are going to beat our field spell. We'll go for the Sheet afterwards to take the Kitkalos, but oh my god, tell me we are not going to lose to Deck Dev. We're going to Ash the Rhino Heart, which is impressive. They're going to set 1. We'll tuck the Rhino Heart back, and then hope to make a lethal push. It has to be something great off the top. That is literally nothing, because we're going to get Deck Dev'd. Okay, well, 25 direct, and I sure hope you don't normal summon the card that I just put back into your hand. Our opponent's going to normal summon this copy of Rhino Heart. They'll activate the effect. They're going to send a copy of Shaylin to the graveyard. Shaylin effect. They're going to send this copy of Myru back to the deck to go for Kitkalos. We can cycle the Kitkalos, except our opponent still has our infinite impermanence. Okay, well, this is probably all she wrote. We'll let them play it out. They're going to go for Kitkalos here, cycling for the Myru. 8 cards, by the way. They're going to mill 3, followed by 5, and unfortunately, they do hit a Hoffiness, which allows them to go into Kaleido Heart. The Kaleido Heart will bounce our Bengal Lancer, and we are absolutely domed. So it's time for that all-important game 3, and that last one is just so frustrating. I feel like even with a hand that mediocre, there was some way to do it. Though I think I may see the way to do this one. I love, quote, playing Yu-Gi-Oh! End quotes. Let's begin with a copy of Unexpected Die to summon from deck a copy of Sunseed Genus Loci. We're going to go into a Dryas, into a copy of Twin, and oh no, did you board out your hand traps for board breakers? Well, I sure hope you have a chance to activate them. Oh goodness, we're going to go into a Healer, into a Genus Loci. We'll activate the effect of the Healer, and it's time of the round, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go into an Aromaseraphie Jasmine, a second Dryas, and a second Healer. The Healer triggers, targeting the Dryas, triggering the Aromaseraphie Jasmine on field, adding a Snowdrop to hand. Before we activate Aromaseraphie Jasmine to go into a Lone Fire Blossom. Blossom's going to trigger here. Just so good having this in rotation. We'll go for Mudon next in order to add from deck to hand the Con. We'll go for the Glamour afterwards, and we will summon from our hand the Primura that we just searched. We'll go for the Con afterwards, activating the effect in order to set a copy of Sheet before activating Princess. Just by doing it. Just hit yes. I don't know what to tell you. We'll go for Stranai here in order to cycle back this Lone Fire. That's material for the Snowdrop afterwards, and then we'll trigger the Stranai to go into a Hyperratin with a monster attached. Lone Fire here gets a Petal into rotation, which we can trigger in order to add from deck to hand a Princess for next turn. We're going to go for Melius and cycle back this copy of Genus Loci to make a Bengal Lancer before activating Snowdrop, targeting this Petal, and going into a Teardrop. We'll set 3, pass back to our opponent, and not so fast, criminal scum! Nice IO. They'll go for King of the Swamp, getting a polymerization that will not do anything. They're going to send... Okay, sure. Let's go for the teardrop here. They're going to go for Myru. We are going to negate it, and we are also going to trigger Hyperratin here because it's very funny to do so. Afterwards, we'll activate Teardrop's effect. It's at 32, which means all we have to do is bang a Lancer in Graveyard, summon it back, and just switch all of our monsters to attack position. What a fun, interesting, and interactive game. I'm so glad Konami has left this card legal. So we're back with the deck, and wow, this deck is nuts! It really feels like it can play through just about anything. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1. Princess is one of the funniest cards ever printed. I cannot believe you are just allowed to do her effect whenever you feel like it, and it's a negate in the graveyard. It's actual comedy. 2. More than the 2 new Rikka cards, I'm impressed by the hidden gems lurking in the back of the bouquet. Obviously, Snowdrop is good, but Petal is an unbelievable play starter and inevitability tool. 3. The metagame is not prepared for the way this deck interacts with opponents' boards. Tributes for cost, Snatch Steals, and Bangalancer are a far cry away from boring old negates, and the deck's much better for it. And the cons. 1. It's still got elements of a combo deck. Being unable to loop Loci lines the way that we can repeat Rikkas means that the Thorns are often taken out of the strategy after turn 1. If you can't simplify the game state, you might get outground. 2. It's hard to play. These cards lock you in different ways at different points in the combo, and it's not easy to manage what you should go all in on based on incomplete information. And 3. It is liable to get run over. This format, games may go longer, but your life points are a resource you may have to manage, and this deck does have some trouble stabilizing. All in all, it's a promising new addition to the metagame. I look forward to seeing what florists are able to assemble in the coming weeks. There's clearly something beautiful in this bouquet.